Perfection was the role I learned to play before I even understood the cost of it. The world didn't just want my voice, it wanted flawlessness. Every note had to soar, every appearance had to shine, every smile had to reassure people that I was exactly who they believed me to be. For a long time, I tried to live up to that image. I thought perfection was protection. I thought if I never cracked, no one would see how tired I really was. But perfection is a cage made of applause. This story begins on the night I finally stopped trying to be everything everyone expected. Not on stage, not in front of cameras, but in a quiet moment when I realized that being perfect was slowly erasing who I truly was. That decision didn't make headlines right away, but it changed everything that came after. Stay with this story until the end, because the moment Whitney Houston refused to be perfect anymore was the moment she chose truth over illusion. And if this story moves you, support the channel by liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications so you don't miss the next powerful story. I knew something was wrong the moment the applause felt heavier than the silence that followed it. That night, the theater in Chicago was full, sold out, bright, buzzing with expectation. The kind of crowd people dream about. The kind that used to make my chest lift with pride. But as I stood backstage, listening to my name echo from thousands of mouths, I felt none of that familiar rush. Instead, there was a tightness in my throat that had nothing to do with singing. 2 minutes, Whitney, someone called out. I nodded, even though no one was looking at me. I always nodded. I always said yes. The mirror in my dressing room showed the version of me the world adored. Flawless makeup, a shimmering gown, hair sculpted into perfection. I stared at her, at myself, and felt like I was looking at a portrait instead of a person. She looked strong, confident, untouchable. I felt exhausted. The pressure didn't come from the audience alone. It came from years of whispers that sounded like compliments. You never miss a note. You're the standard. Don't change anything, it works. Each word polished me smoother, shinier, and more distant from who I actually was. I thought perfection would protect me. I didn't realize it was slowly erasing me. As the band warmed up, I could hear the low hum of the crowd through the walls. The sound vibrated through the floor, through my shoes, up my spine. Normally, that vibration grounded me. That night, it felt like a countdown. Clive had called earlier in the day. His voice was calm, practiced. Just give them what they expect, he said. They need to feel safe with you. Safe. I sat down and closed my eyes, trying to breathe. My hands were trembling slightly, not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for me to feel ashamed. Whitney Houston wasn't supposed to shake. She wasn't supposed to doubt. She wasn't supposed to hesitate backstage while thousands waited. But I did. I remembered being a little girl in Newark, singing in church, my voice raw and free and imperfect. Nobody asked me to be flawless back then. They just asked me to be honest. Somewhere along the way, honesty became risky. Perfection became currency. The stage manager knocked lightly. 30 seconds. I stood up, smoothing the dress like I'd done 1,000 times before. Muscle memory. Habit. Survival. As I walked toward the stage entrance, I caught a glimpse of the side curtain lifting and falling with the air. Beyond it waited the lights, the cameras, the expectations. Beyond it waited the version of me everyone thought they knew. The announcer's voice boomed. Ladies and gentlemen, Whitney Houston. The crowd erupted. I stepped into the light, and the roar hit me full force. Thousands of faces blurred into one glowing mass. The band struck the opening chord of the song they loved, the one they always loved. The one I'd sung so many times it felt carved into my bones. I lifted the microphone. And for the first time in my career, I hesitated. The first note sat in my chest unspoken. In that pause, barely a second, but endless to me, I felt a question rise that terrified me more than any missed note ever could. What if I didn't give them perfection tonight? What if I gave them the truth instead? The band waited. The crowd waited. The world held its breath. And I stood there, on the edge of a choice I knew I could never take back. The pause didn't last long enough for anyone to panic, but it lasted long enough for me to feel exposed. I finally sang the first note, and the crowd erupted as if nothing had happened. To them, it was just another Whitney Houston moment. To me, it felt like a lie narrowly escaped. My voice filled the room the way it always did, powerful, controlled, soaring exactly where it was supposed to soar. Muscle memory took over, guiding me through the melody like an autopilot I'd trained for years. But inside, I wasn't singing. I was watching myself perform. Each note landed perfectly. Each breath came on cue. The audience clapped at the right moments, swayed when they were supposed to sway. I smiled when the camera swept past my face. It was all working. That was the problem. Between songs, the applause crashed over me in waves. I stepped back from the mic, pretending to catch my breath. In reality, I was trying to remember when singing stopped feeling like telling the truth and started feeling like delivering a product. "You sound incredible tonight," my musical director whispered as he passed behind me. I nodded again, always nodding. The second song began, then the third. My body moved, my voice soared, and the audience leaned forward like they always did, hungry and grateful. But with every song, a quiet pressure built in my chest. The more they applauded, the more I felt myself disappearing behind the sound. During a brief instrumental break, my eyes drifted to the front row. I saw tears, smiles, hands clasped to hearts. People who had tied their lives to my music. Weddings, funerals, first loves, last goodbyes. They didn't know me. They knew the version of me that never cracked. I walked off stage for a quick wardrobe change, the applause still roaring as the lights dimmed. Backstage was chaos, assistants moving fast, voices overlapping, fabric being adjusted, water bottles pressed into my hands. "You're killing it out there," someone said. I wanted to scream. Instead, I took a sip of water and stared at the floor. My reflection in a mirrored case caught my eye again, the same perfect image, untouched by the weight pressing down on my ribs. Then I heard something that made my stomach tighten. Two crew members were whispering near the curtain. They didn't realize I was close enough to hear. "She still got it," one said. "Yeah," the other replied. "As long as she stays on script." On script. The words landed harder than any criticism ever had. Not because they were cruel, but because they were true. I returned to the stage in a different outfit, a different smile, the same expectations. The crowd welcomed me back like nothing had changed. But something had. Halfway through the next song, I made a decision so small no one noticed it, except me. I altered a note. Just slightly. A rough edge, where there used to be polish. A breath held longer than planned. A sound closer to how I felt than how I was trained to sound. The reaction was subtle. A few heads tilted. A few expressions shifted. Nothing dramatic. But my heart started pounding like I'd just stepped onto thin ice. After the song, the applause came again, loud, generous, but different. Curious. I stepped toward the microphone to speak. My heart raced. This wasn't planned. No cue cards. No safe phrases rehearsed in advance. "I want to say something," I began. My voice sounded steady. I wasn't. Behind the lights, I saw movement. The stage manager stiffened. Someone near the monitors lifted a hand, unsure whether to cut or let me continue. I could feel the machinery of the show tightening, ready to pull me back into place. I swallowed. What I was about to say wasn't on the set list. And once the truth left my mouth, there would be no way to pretend this was just another perfect performance. The silence after my first sentence was louder than any applause I'd heard all night. "I've been thinking a lot lately," I continued, my fingers tightening around the microphone. The metal felt colder than it should have. The lights blinded me enough that I couldn't see individual faces anymore, just shapes and shadows waiting for something they didn't expect. Behind me, the band froze. No soft chord to cushion my words. No musical safety net. "I've been thinking about what it means to stand up here," I said. My voice didn't shake, but my chest felt like it was caving inward. "About what you all hear and what you don't." I heard a murmur ripple through the crowd. Confusion. Curiosity. A few nervous laughs, like people weren't sure if this was part of the show. I wasn't sure either. This stage has been my home for a long time, I went on. And I'm grateful. Truly. But sometimes, when you do something long enough, people stop seeing you. They just see what they expect. Somewhere near the front, someone whispered my name. I closed my eyes for half a second. When I opened them, I made a choice that terrified me. I've been afraid to disappoint you. The words hung there, fragile and exposed. I felt it immediately, the shift. Not everyone leaned forward. Some leaned back. This wasn't the polished gratitude speech they were used to. This wasn't a transition into the next hit. Backstage, I could sense movement without seeing it. People adjusting headsets. People calculating risk. I've been afraid that if I wasn't perfect, I said slowly, you might stop listening. My throat tightened. I swallowed hard, and for the first time that night, my voice wavered. I don't always feel strong, I admitted. And I don't always know who I'm supposed to be when the lights go off. The audience was completely silent now. No phones raised. No chatter. Just thousands of people holding the same breath. I thought about all the times I'd been told to save honesty for interviews. To save vulnerability for liner notes. To never let it interrupt the performance. But this wasn't interrupting anything. This was the performance. I'm telling you this, I said, my voice quieter now, because tonight, I don't want to hide. A few rows back, someone stood up. Not cheering, listening. I heard my own breathing through the monitors. Each inhale felt like a risk. Each exhale felt like relief. Then from the side of the stage, I saw the signal. A hand slicing across the air. Cut it. The stage manager's face was tight, eyes locked on me. He pointed subtly toward the band, then toward the teleprompter that suddenly flickered back on. The message was clear. Get back on track. I looked at the screen. Lyrics waiting for me. Safe lyrics. Familiar lyrics. For a split second, I considered it. I could step back into the song, smooth everything over, let this moment fade into a memorable speech instead of a problem. The crowd would cheer. The show would continue. The machine would keep turning. Instead, I did something even more dangerous. I lowered the microphone. The sound of it clicking against the stand echoed across the arena. Small. Sharp. Final. I don't know how to sing the next song, I said honestly, my voice carrying without amplification, if I pretend I'm okay when I'm not. Gasps rippled outward. A few people clapped, hesitant, uncertain. From backstage, someone shouted my name, sharp and urgent. I ignored it. I need to figure out who I am, I said softer now. Not who you paid to see. My hands were shaking openly now. There was no hiding it. Security shifted near the stage. The band exchanged glances. This was no longer just emotional, it was becoming a problem. And as I stood there, exposed under the lights, I realized something terrifying and freeing at the same time. Once you tell the truth out loud, you can't unhear it. And the night was no longer under my control. The first thing I noticed was how fast silence can turn into threat. It didn't happen all at once. It started with movement, subtle, coordinated, unmistakable. The kind of movement you only recognize when you've spent your life around stages and systems. The band didn't resume playing. The lights didn't change. Instead, two security guards stepped closer to the edge of the stage, their posture no longer casual. I felt it in my chest before my mind caught up. They're going to stop this. Someone backstage was speaking into a headset rapidly. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read the tension in their shoulders. This wasn't concern anymore. This was damage control. Whitney, a voice called from the wings, firm, controlled. Let's take a breath. I turned my head slightly, but didn't step away from the mic stand. The crowd was restless now, a low hum spreading like static. Some people clapped in support. Others looked uncomfortable, unsure whether they were witnessing honesty or a breakdown. Both terrified them. I am breathing, I said, louder than I meant to. For the first time tonight. That drew a reaction, louder applause from one section, uneasy silence from another. The audience was dividing in real time, and that scared the people whose job it was to keep things predictable. A woman from my management team appeared near the monitors. Her smile was tight, professional, pleading. She shook her head slowly, almost imperceptibly.
Don't.
I thought of all the times I had listened to that look. All the times I had swallowed words to protect a brand that carried my name but never fully belonged to me. I was told this show had to be perfect, I said, turning back to the crowd. But nobody asked if I was okay. A ripple of gasps moved through the seats. That was the line. The stage manager stepped forward now, no longer subtle. He raised his voice, though he tried to keep it calm. Whitney, we're going to pause for a moment.
Pause.
That was the word they used when they meant end it. I felt anger rise, not explosive, not wild, but steady and hot. The kind that comes when you realize how many years you've spent cooperating in your own erasure. No, I said simply. The word felt dangerous in my mouth. I had sung for presidents, royalty, millions of strangers. But I had rarely said no. The crowd reacted immediately.
Cheers.
Loud, scattered, emotional. Someone shouted, "We're listening." That almost broke me. But backstage, the reaction was colder. The lights shifted, not dramatically, but enough. A cue. A warning. I knew that lighting pattern. It meant transition. Exit. I stepped forward instead. If I walk off this stage right now, I said, my voice cracking for the first time, I'll walk off still pretending. Tears blurred the edges of the room. I didn't wipe them away. I don't want to be perfect anymore, I said. I want to be real. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the sound cut. Not my voice, the speakers. My words stopped echoing. The room fell into raw, unamplified noise. Confusion. Shouts. My name called from every direction. I stood there, suddenly small, my voice swallowed by the size of the arena. The stage manager rushed toward me now, urgency in his eyes. "We're pulling you off," he said under his breath. "This is out of control." I looked at him, then at the crowd, thousands of people standing, unsure whether to cheer or protest. "This is my life," I said quietly. "And I'm still standing." He reached for my arm. And in that moment, with his hand inches away, the lights dimming, the audience erupting, I realized the truth had crossed a line. Whatever happened next wouldn't stay on this stage. It would follow me into every room, every headline, every silence that came after. And I didn't know yet whether I had just freed myself or started a war I couldn't win. They didn't pull me off the stage, not immediately. That hesitation told me everything. The crowd had turned, not against me, but toward me. People were standing now, shouting, clapping, some crying openly. The energy wasn't celebratory. It was protective, unpredictable, and the people backstage knew better than to ignite it further. The stage manager's hand hovered near my arm, then dropped. "Hold," someone barked through his headset. I stayed where I was, heart hammering so hard I thought it might drown out every sound in the room. Without the speakers, my voice couldn't carry far, but my presence could. Sometimes truth doesn't need amplification. I leaned toward the edge of the stage. "I know this isn't what you paid for," I said, forcing my voice to project. "But this is who I am when the music stops." A woman in the front row reached out, tears streaming down her face. She didn't touch me, but her hand stayed there, trembling. That small, human gesture cracked something open inside me. Behind me, the band quietly set their instruments down. No one told them to. They just understood. This wasn't a concert anymore. Then came the phones. I saw the glow first, dozens of small screens lighting up the darkness. This moment wasn't staying here. It was already leaving the building, already becoming something I couldn't control. A familiar fear surged through me. Not of being seen, but of being interpreted. I heard my name shouted again, sharper this time. A voice I knew too well. My manager stepped into view, her expression no longer pleading. It was calculating now. "You don't understand what you're doing," she said, keeping her tone low, urgent. "This will follow you forever." I looked at her and felt a strange calm settle in. "I know," I said. "That's why I'm doing it." Her jaw tightened. You're burning bridges. No, I replied. I'm finally standing on my own ground. She shook her head slowly, disbelief mixing with something else. Fear. Not for me. For the machine. Security shifted again, uncertain. They were trained for chaos, not conscience. Then someone in the audience shouted, "Let her speak." The words spread like fire. Chants rose, uneven but growing louder. The crowd wasn't asking anymore. They were demanding. I felt tears spill freely now. I didn't hide them. For years, I had sung heartbreak without letting anyone see it touch my face.
This time it did.
I don't have all the answers, I said, my voice breaking. But I know I can't keep pretending that perfection doesn't hurt. The chant softened. Listening replaced noise. I've lost myself trying to be everything for everyone, I continued. And tonight, I chose not to do that anymore. A sudden movement caught my eye, a man in a suit speaking urgently into his phone, eyes locked on me. Legal. Crisis. Strategy. The consequences were assembling themselves in real time. Then the house lights began to rise. Not slowly, not gracefully, all at once. A harsh, exposing brightness flooded the arena. The kind used to end things, not honor them. Boos mixed with cheers. Confusion rippled through the crowd. The stage manager stepped in front of me now. "That's it," he said. "We're done." I felt a hand grip my arm, firmer this time. And as they began to guide me toward the wings, as the noise behind me swelled into something uncontainable, I understood the truth I'd been circling all night. This wasn't just about one performance. This was about what happens after you tell the truth. When the applause fades, the lights come up, and the world decides what your honesty is worth. And I had no idea yet what it was going to cost me. The hallway behind the stage felt longer than it ever had before. Every step away from the lights made the noise behind me blur into something distant and unreal. The chants, the boos, the applause, they all melted into a dull echo as a heavy door closed behind us. Silence rushed in thick and final. No cameras. No audience. Just fluorescent lights and faces that didn't know how to look at me anymore. They let go of my arm. For a moment, no one spoke. The kind of silence that waits to see who will break first. I leaned against the wall, my legs suddenly weak, the adrenaline draining out of me all at once. My hands were still shaking. Not from fear now, from release. "You've just created a nightmare," someone finally said. I didn't even turn to see who. "Maybe," I replied quietly, "but it's my nightmare." That seemed to stop them. I walked into my dressing room and closed the door myself. Slowly, deliberately. For the first time that night, I was alone. The mirror was still there. Same lights. Same reflection. But something had shifted. The woman staring back at me didn't look perfect anymore, and she looked more real than she had in years. Mascara smudged. Eyes red. Shoulders slumped. Human. I sat down and let the quiet settle. No music humming through the walls. No crowd reacting to every breath. Just the sound of my own breathing, uneven but honest. I thought about what would come next. The headlines. The speculation. The concern dressed up as criticism. People saying I'd lost control. People saying I was brave. People speaking for me again. I couldn't stop any of it. And for the first time, that didn't terrify me. I remembered the girl in church, singing because it felt like prayer. I remembered the first time someone told me I was special, and how quickly that turned into responsibility. Obligation. Expectation. I had carried all of that onto every stage I ever stepped on. Tonight, I put it down. There was a knock at the door.
Soft.
Careful. I opened it to find my assistant standing there, eyes glossy. She didn't say anything at first. She just hugged me. "I've never seen you like that," she whispered. "I know," I said. "Neither have I." She pulled back and smiled, not the polite smile people use around celebrities, but a real one. "For what it's worth," she said, "I think they finally saw you." After she left, I sat back down and stared at the wall, listening to the distant sounds of the arena emptying. Chairs folding. Voices fading. The end of something. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. I didn't know what doors would close, or which ones I'd have to open myself. I only knew this. I had told the truth. And silence, real silence, followed. Not the silence of being ignored. The silence of being done pretending. When I finally stood up to leave, I felt lighter. Not free. Not healed. But honest.
And that was enough for now.
Because perfection had demanded everything from me. Truth only asked that I be myself. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to listen to what that meant.